Here we are, Calvary Church. The month of June is just around the corner, and once again this year, we're going to do together the One Church, 1 Month, and 1 Tithe Challenge. That is right. We did this last year. We saw God move wonderfully in your life, heard many great stories of people trusting God in their finances. Why do we do this? It helps you take a step of faith with those around you. We're doing this together. Tithing is not just for me, it's for all of us. We do this as a corporate body. So the month of June, let's come together as one church. And for just 1 month, let's all bring 1 tithe to God's house. I know that money is a touchy topic, and money has its ups and downs as life has its ups and downs. But I also know this, that Jesus Christ is the author and the perfecter of our faith. And as we follow him and follow his word, I know that he can help to fix my finances.
All right. Now, the series that we're involved in, and I love this passage that we just read because, again, I always love it, but I love how Pastor Marty started. It's the fix my fill in the blank. And the very first sermon Pastor gave us was fix my marriage. Now, it's interesting. Even though we live in Springfield, we come up here fairly often, not as often as I used to, of course, but we always watch the services online. So for those of you that are online, hey, how's it going? I know what it's like to be in the living room watching, and we've got it on our big screen TV, and it's great, but I got to tell you, it's greater to be here. It is so cool being with you, and I love the worship experience. I love being in the congregation. I love going through the halls and seeing people. You know, the church is about people. The church is not a building. The building's where the people are. The building's where the church is, right? So, but anyway, back to my point. So we're sitting there in our living room, and we're watching, and here this is, Marty's talking about marriage, but he's starting with the story in Luke where Peter and the rest of the disciples had fished all night and caught no fishes, you know that? And Jesus just says, cast your nets on the other side. And Peter's like, what? What is that? And I remember Karen, she was sitting there, she looks at me and says, where's he going? And I'm in my inside, I'm just grinning because as preachers, we get this stuff. Where he was going is, like 5 seconds later, he goes, Peter said, but Lord, because you say so, I'll cast my nets on the other side. And I looked back at her and I said, see? Yeah, so this whole idea, and Marty started us right, because he said so. That's why we do stuff. So our series, it started off with fix my marriage, fix my kids. I loved, man, Pastor Michael nailed that. At the very end of that message, you remember when he said, your kids are not broken. This world is broken. Amen. And see, God wants us to not just be able to deal with these challenges, he wants us then to share it. Pastor Marty's been saying this, we're going to study and we're going to do and we're going to teach. That's what God wants his church to be. Not a bunch of folks who gather. That's great. It's a bunch of folks who scatter after they gather. You get it? So fix my marriage, fix my kids, fix my mind, fix my sin. Next week, fix my hurts, because the Lord cares. But today, one of the hurts, fix my finances. Now, I am a finance guy. I'm a pastor too. So I'm putting these things together because I'll tell you, I really believe that finances should be part of your discipleship. If you will start to see finance as an integrated whole with your prayer life, with your Bible reading, with how you love your mate, how you love your kids, how you love your friends, how you share your heart with people that need Jesus. See, if you will integrate that and quit seeing as finances external or finances as in addition to, integrate all this, you're going to see incredible and amazing results. And so, but we are living in a world where a lot of stuff needs to be fixed. Just this past Thursday, I was reading an article in CNN, May 19, 2022. Here's how the article started. When it comes to fraying nerves, this spring is really outperforming. Stocks are now in bear market territory. Interest rates and COVID cases are climbing. Inflation remains high. And all of it combined is sparking recession fears. Geopolitical unrest continues. And all of it is combined is sparking recession fears. And then it ends with this little opening paragraph. No one's finances are immune. Now, how's that for good news this morning? Pretty good, right? But it's true. I don't care how much or how little you have. When you think about fixing your finances, one of the things about the financial world is we know for sure is it going to go up and it's going to go down. Now, again, because I study this stuff, I live with this stuff, I deal with this stuff, I can tell you historically, you're going to see times of recession, times of bear markets, whatever phrase you want to use. Typically, over any 10-year period, you're going to see these dips, and you're going to see these things go up and down. And so once again, as God's people, what we've got to do is be wise and recognize whether you have a little or a lot, the financial world of this world is unstable. It needs attention. Now, if your finances are really struggling right now, I know that paying gas at the pump is really hurting. Or your rent's going up, or the groceries are going up. I mean, you name it, what's not going up? This is one of those times that even defies history a little bit. We haven't seen this kind of inflation for 40 years. You know, this 8% stuff. And, you know, you can tell that the world doesn't have any answers, right? They're trying all the things they know to try. And some of this stuff is, frankly, it's going to always be out of everybody's control. But is anything outside of God's control? God is always knowing it, and he is always with us. Does it mean it's always smooth sailing? No. We will have trouble. We will have, Jesus called it tribulation. But he said, be of good cheer, I've overcome the world. So when we go to any topic, and today we'll go to finance, just remember, Jesus is with you. He has a lot to say about every topic, either directly or indirectly. And today we're going to take a look at the finance piece. Now, I want to point you to Luke 16. You know, this whole series has gone in the Gospel of Luke and used Luke as kind of our platform, our foundation. So nearly every passage I'll mention to you today has it's something out of Luke. But Luke 16 is the theme passage. If I could kind of really wood burn this one in our brains. There's 3, what I'm going to call growth milestones I want you and me to see. I want us to really dig into. 3 steps of growth that when you are living in God's ways with God's power and God's presence, you're going to see incredible positive blessings. So let's read the passage and I'll show you what those 3 growth milestones are. Luke 16, Jesus tells a story. Actually, he's just told a story. Now he gives the kind of the interpretation. He says, whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. And whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with very much. So if you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? And if you have not been trustworthy with someone else's property, who will give you property of your own? Now here's what we just heard. Jesus is using really kind of a secular illustration to make what is both a financial point but also a faith point. Now here's how it works. There's 3 phrases I want you to remember. Each one of these are good things to have. In fact, I'd go so far as to say they're essential. They're growth milestones. So as you grab hold of one and learn it and live it, you can grab hold of the next one and learn it and live it, and takes you to the most important 3rd growth milestones. And here they are. Number 1, you and I want to learn to be trusted with little so that we can be trusted with much, so that we can be trusted with true riches. Now, how's that for intriguing? You know, I'm going to start with the little. Jesus starts with the little. And he wants us to understand there is a link between the little and the lot. There's a link between the little, the lot, and then what's even better. So let's just go ahead and start with the little. He uses 2 words. He says, if you're trusted with little, you'll be trusted with much. If you're dishonest with little. Now, I don't know if that struck you the way it did me, but I'm reading, I'm kind of going, whoa, what do you mean? Dishonest. Does it mean like you're stealing money? So I went back and dug that word out a little bit in the original language, and one of the things that I discovered, it could be translated that way, but it really appears to be that Jesus is using an opposite. So you're either trustworthy or you're not trustworthy. And I can give you some Greek background on that, and you'd probably be tired of me real quick. But I would just tell you that the linguistics support that. It's the trustworthy and the opposite of trustworthy. Now, when I think about trustworthy, and I think about money, I think about who can I have confidence in? Who can I believe they know what they're doing? That they're going to follow through with what they say? That when I entrust money to them, I get it back and there's been positive results, right? It's not just about money. It's about anything. If you trust somebody with something, you expect good things to happen. Now, recently, and frankly now, it's not so recent. What is it, Karen, 5 months ago when our dryer quit working? The heating element quit working. So it still works, but it takes you like 3 times as long. So we call this appliance repair guy in town, and he's got good ratings, good reviews. He comes in. Karen liked him, seemed like he's a smart guy. I think he changed everything in the dryer. I mean, really. And so we got this bill that I thought was kind of high, and he's just told us how much things have gone up, but he said this ought to take care of it. So he leaves, and guess what? It works for a little while, and then it quits. And so we call him, and by the way, you know how it is. This is like, COVID is the cause of all scourges in the world. I'm just convinced. So he's, it takes him forever to come back. In the meantime, we're drying things 3 times to get them dry. And he comes back in. Okay, to his credit, he swaps everything out. Except for one item, by the way. And okay, started again. Guess what? Works for a little while. Works while he's there. How many of that has happened to you, right? It's like as soon as he leaves, it quits working, right? So it quits working. So we're on the 3rd time now. I don't know, it probably feels like 5 months, I don't know, but it's been a long time. So last week he comes back and he said, well, there's only one other thing it can be. It's the timer. And I'm like, huh? He was even trying to tell us that the circuit was bad. I'm like, then why does it work at all? I'm not an electrician. I know it either works or doesn't. Long story short, he said, if it doesn't fix it this time, we'll give you your money back. And I'm like, number one, I hope it works. And when we left yesterday, I think it did work, right? Last we heard. But I'm thinking, you know what? Give my money back. Okay, but do you think I'm going back to that company? Now, fair enough. Some of you probably repair this stuff. You're like, hey, there's a reason for, okay, I get it. But the point of it is, if you don't trust them to do it, you don't do it with them again. I mean, you take your car to the same place and keep going back and they never get it fixed. After a while, you're going to go, let's try somebody else. So here's the point. This makes sense to the world. And Jesus is telling you, trusted with little, trusted with much. Not trusted with little, not trusted with much. So the proving ground for fixing our finances is to start where you are. Whether it's a teeny bit or a lot, you start where you are. Because most of the time, again, been doing this a long time. If you ask me to help you fix your finances, it's always because you're on that little piece. I don't have many wealthy people that ask me to help them fix their finances. Frankly, I have had 0 tell me that. So if you're feeling this today, it's okay. Because Jesus said, if you will be trusted with little, you can be trusted with much. Because God is going to help you. Little is the proving ground for more. God is watching. God knows. He is going to help you. So here you go. Trusted with little. First thing we want to tell you is, Convoy, we got some new things for you on the financial arena. So if you go to the website, go to calvarynaperville.org/finances. I could ask you to do that after church, but I know you're already doing it, so that's okay. When you go on that site, you're going to see a podcast series Pastor Christian Axelson and I put together. It's the first one. I think there's 8 short sessions, 8 or 10 minutes each. So it's not long. You can listen one at a time, or you listen to them all at once. It's easy. But they're starting with the debt, getting out of debt primarily. And along with those 8 or 10 minute little discussions Christian and I are having, we've got some forms for you to fill out. They're all come out of my book, From Debt to Life. So you can get started like that. So that's one thing we're doing for you. We're going to add to that. So we're going to keep adding financial topics. So feel free to send me or send Pastor Christian an email with topics you'd like us to address, and we'll be doing that. That's number one. Number 2 is, you may have noticed this in some of the handouts when you got them coming in, is on June the 12th, Calvary's going to restart our Financial Peace University training, which Financial Peace University was developed by Dave Ramsey. You probably heard him on the radio. And I'm telling you, it is one of the best and honestly one of the fastest ways, if you will follow what he teaches, for you to get out of debt and start to building your financial future. And Ramsey, he's obviously a Christian. Even though he's on secular radio, he's one of those guys that just has a lot of good stuff to say. Now, here's one of the things. This is like an offer you can't refuse. So it normally costs $100 to take Financial Peace University, the course. Calvary is going to pay 75 of the 100. So you cannot beat that opportunity. And let me tell you why you need to pay the 25. If you don't pay something, you will not take it seriously. So you've got to put some, as they say, skin in the game. You've got to say, I'm going to invest some money because it will hold me accountable to learn what I need to learn. I think we haven't done it in like 2.5, 3 years, but I remember back a few years ago, we had examples where we were able to add up hundreds of thousands of dollars in credit card debt that our Calvary folks here were able to eliminate following those principles. So that's the starting point. Start where you are. Now, kind of to give you a little bit of a nutshell for today, I've got 3 points to how to be trusted with little. Number 1, spend less than you make. You think? Yeah, exactly. You know, you've got to control your spending. Your spending your money does not spend itself. You know, I know it sounds kind of dumb, but we got everything in the world. I used to teach marketing at Evangel University. You know, marketers want you to spend without thinking. They don't want you to think too hard. So we've got Apple Pay, and we've got Touch to Pay, and I can use my watch and pay. I mean, who saw cash anymore, right? It's so easy now. You can get in over your head because if you're not controlling your spending, you have a tendency to go with your impulses. So you got to control your spending. And by the way, the podcasts and the forums will deal with that specifically. And as a part of that, you got to follow a plan. So I need to control my spending, but that's not enough because you will tire of that. If you're just thinking, no, can't, won't. After a while, you're kind of and you'll start spending again. So yes, you're going to control your spending. Guys, this is like diet and exercise. You're going to control your spending, but you're going to use a plan to help you because a plan helps you know what you will spend, how much you will spend, and when you'll spend. The famous word for this is budget. I know you hear the word budget and you just cringe, right? That's why I don't like to use the word budget. I call it spending plan. You know, I'm going to do this, but this is when and this is how much. Now, this makes sense biblically, too. Jesus said, Luke 14:28 tells another story. He says, suppose one of you wants to build a tower, won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? If you lay the foundation and are not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule you, saying, this person began to build and wasn't able to finish. Count the cost. That's another way of saying, have a plan. And then if you find out you don't have enough money, you either wait or you change your plan. But if you're not thinking about it, it'll just get away from you. And once it gets away from you, it's a whole lot harder to put that genie back in the bottle, isn't it? You get penalties, you get interest on the penalties, you get penalties on the interest on the penalties, you know what I'm saying? That's what credit card debt will do to you. And by the way, if you take the Dave Ramsey stuff, he is death on credit card debt. I'm against it, but I'm against it big time, but boy, you listen to Ramsey long and it'll help you get motivated. So the budget is a way to know what's going on, really. One of the business principles that I've operated off of for a long time is that which is inspected tends to improve. It's when you don't take a look, that's when you get messed up. Another thing that it does, a budget helps you to look ahead and see what would it take for you to get what you want. A number of years ago, I think my son was 16, and he really wanted an Apple computer. He wanted a MacBook. And you know, he's 16. He had a little part-time job, and he was making a little bit of money. But he's like, Dad, you know, all that jazz, right? And I'm glad he's not here to hear this. And I said, I'll tell you what. This is going to show you it was a while ago, because that MacBook was like $600. It's been a long time since Apple sold anything for $600, right? Anyway, so he says, Dad, it's $600. And I said, I'll tell you what. You save up $300, and Mom and I will take the other $300 as like birthday or Christmas, I forgot what, some present. He was all happy about that. And guess what he did? He decided to save his money. Well, what do you know? And he actually did it fast. I was surprised at how fast he got there. Why? Because he was motivated. You know, part of why we don't fix our finances, Jesus is saying, are you counting the cost? No. Well, that's why if you keep doing that, you can't get ahead. So start little, control your spending, follow a plan, and be patient. Over the years, I've helped a lot of people get out of credit card debt, and I will tell you, this is a little bit unnerving, but I will tell you that once you start down the path, you can get there. And the reason why you can get there is because credit scoring is so sophisticated these days. Even though they say yes and give you these credit cards and let you get into debt, there is a limit to how far you'll get into debt because you'll declare bankruptcy. So it's a very sophisticated scoring model. And bottom line is, there's a way to get out, but it will take discipline. And I've seen this happen, that people can take as much as 4 years to get out of credit card debt. Now that makes you go, ugh, but how does 4 years compare to 24 years? See, it's the difference between some discipline and some effort now and feeling enslaved for 2 decades or more. So needless to say, okay, this is pretty fun that Jesus is actually telling us stuff. This is hilarious to me. It's one of those times when the secular world doesn't disagree with Jesus. You know, all the more reason for us as Christians to be really good with our money. Do you think that wouldn't be a testimony to the world if Christians know how to spend and control and be ahead and plan and use good judgment? I mean, wouldn't that be novel? Okay. Anyway, just be patient and work at it. I had another friend at church. In fact, she was the wife of one of the deacons at church that I served a number of years ago. She used to, the way they saved up for their vacation is she would go, when she go to the grocery store, at the end, you know, if you have coupons, down at the bottom, it'll show you, if you use coupons, it'll show you how much you save. And what she used to do is she would look, and she'd get back home, and she would look at the receipt, and down at the bottom where it showed how much she saved, she would write a check to them, to their home savings account, write a check to themselves. And by the time vacation came around, they had saved enough money gradually to have their vacation. I asked her one time, do you like doing that? She said, no, but I like going on vacation. So there you go. Proverbs 13:11 says, he who gathers money little by little makes it grow. So you got to give it some time. Last thing I'll say about being trusted with little is set goals to keep yourself motivated. You know, so break it down into pieces. Whatever you're struggling with right now, pick one area you're going to learn to do. Make it a goal. By this, I will do that. You know, by this time, I will have paid back that much debt. Or by this time, this date, I will have paid off that credit card or those credit cards. By this time, I will have saved up enough for the dryer that Karen and I might have to buy, you know, because this thing might not get fixed. You know what I'm saying? Give yourself goals, short-term, long-term. And by the way, put giving in your goals. If you're not giving, and once again, I know I'm talking to folks who think, oh no, here he comes. Well, I'm just going to tell you the truth. I know from years of study, and I've worked with hundreds of churches, that 50% of most folks don't give. The standard line or standard rule of thumb, and it's very seldom wrong, is 20% of the people give 80% of the money, 30% give 20%. So if you math majors are doing your math, you know that means 50% give little or nothing. So I'm just going to say, not to fuss at you, but to encourage you, like Pastor Marty said, next month, if you aren't giving, why don't you try this? Try it. Just try the tithe. Now you're kind of freaking out going, oh, it's 10%. Well, that's where the faith comes in. But I'll tell you, even if you're not stepping straight to 10, step to something. Be faithful with little. Let God work. You know, Pastor Marty's video was great. The Malachi 3 passage, God says, test me in this. He's saying, you check me out and see if I'm trustworthy. And all we're saying is, I can't know till I step out. See, God's proving himself after we take a step of faith. And that's really what tested and trusted with little is all about. Okay, so get ready to see what God wants to do. That's the month of June. And once you start, don't necessarily expect, God's not some heavenly vending machine. You're not going to punch in $1 and get out 10. It's not that. But you will start to see things happen. Sometimes it's directly financial, but it is always spiritual and emotional. You will feel a draw to God, a closeness you've just not felt. And I can't tell you how God will do it with you. I can just tell you, I've seen it work a lot, including with me. So there you go. Trusted with little. That's milestone 1. If you don't go there, it's hard to go what's next. And you all said you wanted to be trusted with much. So here we go. Trusted with little, trusted with much. Now we're going to go back to Luke. In Luke, there's another story. It's a story in Luke 19 about a king that goes away, and before he goes away, he gives 10 bags of money to his servants. He tells them to put the money to work, and when he comes back, you know, then he'll see how they do. So he goes away, and he comes back, and so in Luke 19, and you can read the whole account if you want to at some point. Let me just highlight the response of the king to the 2 servants. And as you listen to this, I want to say this is not Jesus telling a story about God. This is Jesus telling a story with a secular context. It's almost certain, although nobody can prove this, but I would tell you Jesus is telling a story here. And the king in this story you're going to hear about is probably King Archelaus from the 1st century. And he was known as a harsh king, demanding king, you know, just one of those nobody liked him kind of guys, but holding, you know, everything's just hard. So anyway, here's what the passage says. The first servant, he'd been given one bag of money called a mina. A mina was typically had 60 shekels. And the total of one mina was normally about 3 months' wages. So that's a significant amount of money. So he says, here you go, you 10 servants, come back and show me what you got. So the first one comes back, and here's what it says. He sent for the servant to whom he had given the money in order to find out what they had done with it, what they'd gained with it. The first one came and said, sir, your mina has gained 10 more. So during the time when the king is gone, one bag of money turns into 10 bags of money. That's pretty good. You know, for those of us in investing, that's a really good rate of return. That's a good return on investment. So what does the king say? Well done, my good servant, his master replied. Because you have been trustworthy, there's that word, in handling, trustworthy in a very small matter, take charge of 10 cities. Now this, again, we know this from studying archaeology and the study of ancient worlds, is when a servant was successful, they not only allowed the successful, trustworthy, trusted stewards to have money and management of money, they would sometimes in these larger regions give them control over cities. I mean, think about Daniel. The book of Daniel is a good example of that, where Daniel actually had control of, he was second in command back in Persia, okay? So again, it's common. So here the result of him bringing in 10 times the result financially is now your responsibility is expanded to 10 cities. In other words, good job, right? Now here is the second servant. The second servant, Jesus said to him, then the passage says, then another servant came and said, sir, here is your mina. I have kept it laid away in a piece of cloth. I was afraid of you because you're a hard man. You take out what you did not put in, and you reap what you did not sow. His master replied, I will judge you by your own words. You wicked servant. You knew, did you, that I am a hard man, taking out what I did not put in and reaping what I did not sow? Why then didn't you put my money on deposit so that when I came back, I could have collected it with interest? So this first guy did good. This second guy really bad, right? Now here's some of you may not know. This is a little bit, again, from archaeology and from ancient history, is even back in the first century, they had strong boxes. And they would put, if they wanted to save something or hide something, they could put money and jewels and any kind of valuables. They put them in a strong box, a wooden strong box, lock it down, bury it. Nobody knows where it is, but it's still kept safe. This guy didn't even have enough sense to get a box. He put in a piece of cloth. So you got a bag of money, which is cloth, and you got him in a cloth, and all he did was hide it in the cloth. In other words, he was a clown. He was just no good. Remember I told you, trustworthy, not trustworthy. Can do the job, can't do the job. This guy blew it with the one bag, and then he's trying to explain himself away. And the master, the king, he says, you could have at least given it to the bankers and gotten some interest. You know, you could have at least done that. And he didn't even do that. It's kind of the obvious stuff. Now, what I think this story is illustrating for us, again, is this principle of, are you learning the skills that would allow anybody, and certainly God's part of this, to trust you with resources? Trust with little, trust with much. So these skills are implied when you look at the two servants side by side. You have an industrious servant, you got a lazy servant. You got a servant that was good at producing wealth, results, you got a lazy one. You see how Jesus is setting this up? And here's the deal. The takeaway is results matter to God. So I would say while God does own the cattle on 1,000 hills and he can create anything, he needs no money, he does have an expectation of me and of you that we would take what we have, our finances, our health, our relations, you nail it, anything he's given us, and say, I want to see you make more of it. Not for you necessarily, although we do get to participate, but because his kingdom is about growth and expansion. It's about impact and influence. And so finance, in a very real sense, that's why I said this is part of discipleship, is part of that proving ground, because God wants to use us. See, it's not about guilt, it's about effort. Are you doing your best? God will help you do better. But when you're trusted with little, you can be trusted with much. Now, I'm going to play professor for you just a little bit, and tell you about this being trusted with much. Here's one of the things that is a key: consistency. So you can start right, but you have to stay right. You have to start doing the right things. You have to keep doing the right things. And over time, even the little stuff turns big. Now, in the finance world, we call this compound interest. Anybody know what compound interest is? Probably so. Let me show you a chart, a graph, and it's highly simplified. So I've already been talked to by some of our money guys in the first service. Hey, it's a little more complicated than that. Yes, it is. I know. See, y'all cut me some slack. This is me trying to make it easy. So here's an example, and there's a lot of things I don't factor in, but here's an example of 3 different people. One started at 25, one started at 35, one started at 45. They saved $200 a month, and with just a moderate amount of growth in terms of interest, look at the difference. The guy that started early and stayed at it the longest is like 5 times what the others made, and he invested 1/5, somewhere between 1/3 and 1/5 of what the others did too. So if you will start early and you will stay at it for as long as God lets us, right, you're going to see results. And in the finance world, we call that compound interest. Growth stacks on top of growth. So start early, stay after it. So that's your first principle. Here's your second one. Look at the long term. That's where the results are. Here's why we struggle sometimes to get motivated or stay motivated. It's because we'll start and then we don't see results, and we get a little bit discouraged, we get a little bit frustrated, and we kind of back off. When it's not that you weren't doing the right thing, you just have to keep going. It takes time. And sometimes it takes a long time. But let me show you an example, another chart for you. And once again, this is highly smooth, highly stylized, for this group, for you and a big group, to see what it looks like. There's 4 lines there. The bottom line in green represents the historic level of inflation that is hit, okay? So you gotta cover the inflation costs, and obviously right now it's higher than that, but historically it's low, but it's moving up. The blue line represents cash that you'd save in the bank. So once again, not a lot of growth, a little bit more. Notice it's pretty smooth, pretty flat, but there's value there. But you notice it's going up. The yellow line represents what are called bond funds or fixed income funds. And once again, there's more variation. If I showed you the actual chart, there's so many different charts. I'm using one that's kind of a combined summary so you can see the trends. You see it's higher, it's better than cash, and it's above inflation, but look at the red line or the orange line. That represents the production of the stock market, the overall market for the last generation. So you can see that once you learn the skills, remember, little leads to much. If you're going to be trusted with much, then you want to learn the skills that allows you to have the greatest result, to do it wisely, to do it safely. In fact, I've got a little principle. You save with cash, you invest in good stocks. So I'll save with cash because that's short-term stuff. That's, maybe you're going to buy the washer, or maybe you're going to buy a car, and I'd saving a little bit more, obviously. Maybe you're saving for a vacation. Maybe you're saving, for the first year of college or something. So, that you don't want the wild up and down of that orange line. You want it to be steady, okay? Because if you hit a downtime, you'd lose your money, or you might lose a big chunk of it. But the long haul, as long as you don't have to go get it, you don't have to go back and spend it, it makes sense to invest in companies that earn, companies that make money. That's a whole nother podcast. In fact, Christian and I are working on like an 8-series podcast on investing. We'll do that later this summer. My whole point is simply to say, look at the long term. So if you want to be trusted with much, you're going to learn a few more skills, but that will make you better. But here's the real key when you think about being trusted with much, because God's in charge. So my question is, how far can God trust you today? Can he trust you with your spending? Okay, good. That's step 1. Can he trust you then to learn how to grow the finances he's given you? And you know what? If he can't yet, and he can't yet, again, we start where we are. But you have an opportunity to start to learn. The secret is, will you do it now? Or will you start? So that's invested with much. So you can see how this growth milestone works. It's kind of funny. I even think about when it comes to managing money, a good test is to say to yourself, would you trust yourself to manage your money? If you knew somebody like you, would you give them your money and see if they could do better? And if you kind of go, no, well, that means you got something to work on, right? And that can be done. All right, that's second growth milestone. Trusted with little, trusted with much, and I want to be trusted with true riches. You want that? Oh, absolutely. The true riches. True riches are the things money can't buy. True riches are the things only God can do. You know, really the secret of that is hearing the phrase, well done. I want to hear God say one of these days, I want to hear him say, well done. Not, you were perfect. Not, you never messed up. Not, you were okay. It's all the same to the Lord, well done. That means you did the best you could. That's what we really want to hear him say. In Luke 19, the passage we just read, you know, in that story, the first servant, he was said, well done, good servant. And God trusted him with, or the king trusted him with more. In our lives, it's the same thing. When we do what God says on any part of our lives, he gives us more. More responsibility, more blessing, more opportunity, more correction, more accomplishment. It's the way he works. Because the true riches, you know what it really is? The true riches are the favor of God. When I heard Michael say your kids aren't broken, God is broken. The world is broken. Your kids, man, I blew that. When your kids aren't broken, everything's about God. When your kids are not broken, the world is broken. I thought true riches is being able to raise your kids to love God and to be able to tackle this nation, this world, this craziness we're in. When I think about people who are sick and praying for them and to see them recover. When I think about talking to a friend or a neighbor about the Lord and they say, I want to follow Jesus like Jamie was talking about, that's true riches. Now, does it include money? Yeah, but it's so much more than money. Money is really just God taking care of us. Yeah, you can clap for that. Money is Matthew 6:33. Seek first the kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. Money is contentment. The Bible says, 1 Timothy 6:6, godliness with contentment is great gain. That word is translated as two words in English. Great gain is profit. And contentment means satisfied with what you have. Yeah, true riches are being satisfied with God, what he's doing. True riches are better than money. True riches are things that will last. Now here's my bottom line. If you will treat your money as part of your discipleship, it will revolutionize your finances and your walk with God. God uses the finances to do it, but hey, finances are a means to an end to him. He wants our heart. And with God, all things are possible. Dream big with God. I'm going to leave you with one more story, and our worship team's going to have a final song, and then I'll ask you if you are ready to receive Jesus. Anybody here? We know there'll be some. There's a friend of mine, and he's actually a successful insurance salesperson, financial advisor. A number of years ago, one of the books I've written is on giving, and he wrote me this about that book. He said, Craig, I was thinking more about your book and the comment I made about step one being giving 10%. Over the years, I've done quite a few complete financial plans for people. Part of that process is to do a cash flow analysis in which I ask people where they spend their money. One of the questions concerns charitable contributions. I don't recall a single instance in which a person was giving 10% of their income where they were not in pretty good financial shape. Sadly enough, I also recall very few occasions where people, even church people, were giving 10%, but I know that doesn't surprise you. Granted, I've seen people who were okay financially who didn't give, but even in those cases, it's sad that they choose to depend on their own ability to accumulate wealth rather than God's. If they've done okay on their own, how much more could they have done had they given God his part? If you gave me a choice of a $20 million lump sum, but assured me that if I took it, God would never be a part of my financial life, or if you gave me an annual salary of $20,000, but I had the promises of blessing that God has already given, I'd take the $20,000. It's worth a lot more. 20 million could be gone in a heartbeat. God will always be there. Amen.
Thank you for watching the Calvary Church YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. If you made a decision to follow Christ today, be sure to text CC New Life to 94,000. Someone from our team will reach out to you, say hey, and talk a little bit about what that decision means for you. For more information on our church, head to calvarynaperville.org or follow us on social media by clicking the links in the description. Hope to see you in person soon. Have a great day.